Now, today's interview is brought to you on behalf of Matchday at Guinness Storehouse, Ireland's highest Premier League Fanzone. And we have a very special guest here. I'm going to do my best to introduce him before it's revealed to you on camera who this is. 7 Premier League titles, 3 FA Cup crowns, 1 League Cup, the European Cup Winners' Cup, and of course the Champions League, as well as an under-15 All-Ireland in Croke Park. It's the one and only Denis Irwin. Denis, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks.
Are you well? What are you most proud of there in that list?
I suppose either the first Premier League or the Champions League, but certainly under 15.
I thought you were
All-Ireland,
the All-Ireland
for Crease 3 at Croke Park at the age of 15. That was brilliant. I'd already played Croke Park earlier, about 4 years earlier than that, when I marked Niall Quinn.
Yeah.
Cork schools against Cork primary schools against Dublin primary schools, 1-4 to 1-4 in hurling.
In hurling, yeah.
So I remember that very well as well.
Because he was an unbelievable, I suppose, GA player in general, football and hurling, Niall Quinn. So same with Kevin Moran.
Yeah.
Same with yourself.
Quinny's dad was from Tip, and he grew up kind of more of a hurling man than a Gaelic football man, but ended up, of course, being so good at both. But he was 6'4" anyway.
It did help,
at the age of 14. So
it was a natural advantage.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Am I right in saying soccer really only became prominent for you in your mid-teens, about 14 years old, was it?
Yeah, I got selected for Cork under 14 team. Went on to Ireland under 15. Played in a tournament in France. Got beat against West Germany in the final, and then played a couple of Ireland games after under 15s and 16s, and got spotted out in Merthyr Tydfil, actually in South Wales, by a lead scout, and went across 2 months later, and ended up staying in England since February 1982, a long time ago.
And were you ever tempted to come back to Ireland full time after you finished up?
No, because I had 4 years at Leeds, 4 at Oldham, 12 at United, and 2 at the club I supported as a kid, Wolverhampton Wanderers, Wolves. And at that stage I was nearly 39 and done. Legs had gone out, and it's just time to retire. And you meet an English girl and you spend the rest of your life over there. And to be fair, Frank lives around the corner from me, Frank Stapleton, Roy's around the corner, Kevin Moran around the corner. There's a lot of us still hanging around there, so it's a good place to be. You
meet for the odd breakfast with Roy, is it still?
Yeah. He owes me the next one, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, but people always think, because it's not just 2 Irish players playing at this massive club, but 2 Cork lads, that you'd be inseparable. But it wasn't necessarily the case.
No, I mean, when I went across to United, when I joined from Oldham, Brian Carey was there. Yeah. Brian from Toker, just come across from Cork City. So that was great, and then Roy came across 3 years later, but different ages, different at that stage. I was married. Liam, my eldest, was with me. Roy was a young lad enjoying life, I suppose, and you kind of go have separate kind of friendships away from football. But we've always respected each other, we've always kept in touch, and it's good to see what he's doing now. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I know, it's class. It's funny, I have this debate with people all the time about the state of Irish soccer at the moment. I always wonder, for a tiny country, we have an awful lot of sports, and it depends where you are in the country, but for I suppose we're from the same place outside of Cork, is that you had soccer, hurling, football and rugby. And I was always wondering, does that actually make it a disadvantage to make it if you have too many sports? But in your case, you kind of played a bit of everything.
Yeah, no, I can. I never played rugby. Yeah. It's probably hurling was my main sport, I suppose, when I was growing up. It's great because in Ireland, you have to participate in sports. It's brilliant. I think it's, you grow up, you support everything that goes on. If there's a Tiddlywinks World Cup going on, you support the Irish. And it's great growing up in Cork because, as you said, the choice of sports when you grow up is fantastic. And then as you go further along the line, 14 or 15, 16, I suppose the how good you are at each sport kind of dictates which direction you will go in. So yeah, it can impede, I suppose, sometimes in the fact that, I'm sure there's some great Gaelic football players out there that could have been a soccer player and vice versa. But just so many. Ireland's brilliant for sport, isn't it?
I know. I always wonder that too about the people that could have made it if it wasn't for that, because especially your time growing up, I think Cork won something in hurling every year between 1974 and 1986, and we're previewing this week the league final against Tipperary this weekend. It's not since 1998 if Cork won a league, but at your time, I can imagine that hurling was so dominant because in Crease 3 in the secondary school you went to,
Gaelic football. That was more Gaelic football.
But there's no soccer.
No soccer, no, not allowed. Banned.
That's hard to imagine. That has sort of made it the spite of the school system.
Yeah, but it's the way it was. You know what I mean? It was concentrated on Gaelic football or hurling. I mean, I grew up and my mum's still there, like 30 yards from the Bars Club.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Barry Murphy was my hero. You know, the hurling team in the mid-70s that won the treble, you know, Ray Cummins and Shawnee O'Leary and Jimmy Barry up top. I grew up on that. You know, Cork Hibs and Cork Celtic were flying at the time. Early 70s, mid 70s. It was just a good place to be in Cork as a sports person, really.
I just feel like the summer of 1999 was unbelievable for you, particularly with your own treble and then Cork, Cork nearly doing a double.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I suppose we've been blessed and Cork doing so well. Obviously, a barren spell. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, the hurlers can get up and running.
Yeah, it's looking good.
So it's looking good, looking better. A few young lads have come on the scene.
It is, yeah. It's very much looking good. So you were a centre half.
Yep.
And we shared a club in common in Cork. We both played for Everton.
Yeah.
To the same distinction.
I loved playing for Everton. It was you know, the pitches up by the airport.
Yeah, yes.
I still got some friends that I'm on WhatsApp groups with and all that from those kind of days. And I go back there and they're trying to raise money for an artificial pitch up in the airport because it's badly needed. So in the midst of all that. So yeah, great to be still in touch and still doing the best they ever can. And they've got a young girls kind of teams now up and running. I think they played the first game recently, the senior team. So that's good to see as well.
Yeah. So you're over in Ireland this week with you're doing an event with Andy Cole.
I am. Coley, I bump into him every now and again, and obviously great memories. I think about 7 years with Coley between, I think he joined in 95 to 02 probably. I think he left the same year as me actually. Fantastic striker. I think he's still second in the Premier League history without taking penalties of scoring goals. So incredible, really. Never took penalties, thank God.
Says you were great.
I put my arm around him and said, thanks for that, Coley. But yeah, we're doing something for Guinness Diageo in the Storehouse tonight, viewing of the Forest game. So it's brilliant that Diageo are sponsors of the Premier League, and it's good to come across. It really is.
You had a decent partnership with Andy Cole. I was looking this morning ahead of our chat. It was like you set him up for one of his goals in the 9-0 against Ipswich. Right. That famous game at Old Trafford. And then you set him up for a goal in Europe too. He had a lovely header. And then he returned the favour in Europe to you as well with one of your goals. So you kind of had a nice partnership. It was like, I wonder who, because you had loads of candidates. It was like, who's the best centre forward you played with? Yeah,
it's hard because the four in the treble year, I mean, they were all fantastic, all different. Yorkie, Coley, Teddy and all different players. You know, you kind of looked at Yorkie as a holding up player and Teddy, whereas Ollie was an out-and-out goal scorer and Coley was as quick as the wind. So they were all different in their own ways. You know, Coley was that quick, he'd create chances for himself. I'm really surprised he didn't play more for England actually, but I suppose there was a lot of competition there at the time. But yeah, I mean, because of his pace, you just had to knock it down the channel sometimes, and he'd make a bad ball into a good ball and make me look good. So that was good. But we just had a great team and great morale at that time. You know, under a great manager, and it was a great time to be at United. We were talking. I was with him last week actually. We were talking that we actually won the treble in the Cliff, which is literally 1.5 pitches. You fast forward 25, 30 years, and they've got state of the art, you know, training grounds now, but just to be involved in that little area where you were in it together, you felt you were all in it together. It was brilliant.
Was there a gym at the Cliff?
Kind of a gym. You wouldn't really call it a gym, but the physio took you out if you were injured. The physio took you out and you know did running with you and did weights with you, even though they probably weren't qualified to do that. That's how a small a squad or a whole, what the manager, I think there was assistant manager, a couple of physios. That was about it, really.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was mad. Yeah, because you would think it was this massive operation, but it wasn't really necessarily the case, because there was, like, weirdly, it's certainly against Bayern Munich in the Champions League final, there's kind of an underdog feel to it. It was like Bayern felt like the favourites, and he went and did it without Roy Keane and Paul Scholes as well. I was looking back at some of your goals. I think you said your favourite goal that you scored for United was against Wimbledon.
Yeah,
was it? In
definitely.
Sellers Park with the drop of the shoulder. I love the 1-2 with Eric Cantona against Spurs.
Spurs, yeah.
But Jesus, there was one goal he scored against Wrexham in the FA Cup at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
And it's a flat volley in the edge of the box.
That's right.
Into the back of the net.
Yeah.
I was like, how did that not qualify?
I know. Can you believe what Wrexham are doing now? Yeah, they went 1-up as well. The audacity to go 1-up at Old Trafford. I can't remember what year that was, but I scored 2 that day. And that was the first one was a volley. Yeah. Good times.
Yeah.
Good times. I mean, my right foot was always decent. Left foot was, I had Giggsy as my left foot really, so that helped out an awful lot. And yeah, we were very attacking side, so that played right into my kind of game, where I suppose as a fullback in this day and age, you got to be able to go forward. You got to be a different avenue of attack. And if you play for any really good side back in the day, you have to be comfortable on the ball. I think every fullback has to be comfortable on the ball now.
Yeah.
For any side in the Premier League, it's that competitive.
Would you like to play nowadays? Or
I had my time. No, I had my time. I enjoyed my time. We had a good laugh. We could go out and enjoy ourselves. I'm not say I can't say for sure that that's the case in this day and age, where they kind of can't be seen to go out because of, well, cameras and social media and all that. So no, I enjoyed my time. I had a fantastic 22 years over there playing football, and I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
Winning and losing is part and parcel. Injuries is part and parcel of a footballer's career, footballer's life, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It was amazing, your free kick records, right, for club and country. And like I always think of the one at Anfield where you're 3-0 up and it's go back to 3-all, and you're 2 feet off the ground, it goes in the top left. It's an amazing goal. But then, like, David Beckham has the audacity to come around. How does that conversation happen that, sorry, Dennis?
I don't know. It just kind of, we used to practice in training. And it's one of them, you either got it or you haven't got it. You can't.
What do you mean for free kicks?
Free kicks, yeah.
How did you know you had it?
Because of practice. And if you practice, you can get it up and over the wall and down. You got that whip that David Beckham has, or modern day Trent Alexander. They've just got that knack of getting the ball up and down with a bit of pace, and it's actually can't be taught.
Really?
You can practice it all you want, but if you haven't got it in your locker, you just haven't got it. So that's why you'll see the same players kind of take over and over, take free kicks.
But I wonder, how did you even discover you had it? Because if you're starting off centre half in Ireland, and then when you're signed by Leeds, you're still a centre back, aren't you? It was Eddie Gray moved you fullback, was it?
Yeah, no, I went across to Leeds as a centre half, and more or less, I mean, I played centre half for the youth team, a youth team that included David Seaman and John Sheridan and Scott Sellers and John Scales and Terry Phelan. To name just a few, there's a few more in there that I probably can't remember. Tommy Wright, and then obviously didn't grow tall enough for the. Don't forget the old Division 1 in England, and English in general had a big centre forward. Everybody had a big centre forward, and you needed to be 6 foot plus to be a centre half. And I was never a bit like Gary Neville. Gary Neville started off as centre half, played centre half in the United youth team, but you end up playing full-back. Paul Parker was the same. He joined United in 91 as a centre-half and ended up playing full-back for the rest of his career. That's the influence the manager had. Paul, you're playing there. And yeah, it's just, I think, not so much in this day and age. I mean, you still need a big centre-half in there, but certainly you can get away with it to more of an extent these days, not being so tall.
Well, it's a nice segue into Alex Ferguson. So I have 2 questions regarding the relationship between the two of you. So the timeline is Eddie Gray moves to the fullback. Billy Bremner doesn't fancy it. You end up at Oldham as a right back on the old Astro. 1990 is an unbelievable year. You get to the semi-final of the FA Cup, losing the replay to United, losing the League Cup final to Forest, but it's an unbelievable year. Then you go to United. At this point in time, you've either played centre half or right back, but never left back.
Never left back.
And
no.
There comes to the point where Alex Ferguson says, "Dennis, you're going left back," and he had no experience in it whatsoever.
Well, I played the first year right back, and left back was shared between Lee Martin and Clayton Blackmore and a couple of others. Sharpie played left back sometimes. And I said first year, and then we won the Cup Winners' Cup over in Rotterdam in 91, and I played right back. And then 3 months later, I'm left back for Manchester United because Paul Parker comes in as a centre half, moves to right back, and the manager said to me, because my left foot was decent enough. I mean, it's not like a Sharpie left foot or a Giggsy left foot or anything like that. But it was decent enough, and the manager says you're going to move across there, and if the manager said something back in the day,
Well,
You did it.
I heard you say that recently, right? But would you have ever had the type of relationship, or could anyone in that team have said, Alex, do you mind if I have a word there? Why are you doing this? Why do you want me to play left back when you know I'm a right back?
No chance. Absolutely no chance. I think what he said went. And it was just his style, you know what I mean? It was... He knew I could defend. I think you had to defend, be able to defend in those days as a fullback, a bit more than the modern day fullback. He knew I was more than comfortable on the ball, right foot and left foot. So he must have had the confidence. I have to ask him actually, the confidence and push. I will do next time I see him. Confidence to push me across the left back. But don't forget, in front of me, I had Sharpie for quite a while and Giggsy for like 11 years.
Yeah.
So they were obviously helped me out. It would have been more awkward, I think, if, you know, in the modern day game, the player on the left is normally a right-footed winger now, isn't he? When you see it, they all cut in. It would have been more awkward if Giggsy was right-footed or Sharpie was right-footed. But as I said, they helped me out, and I was more than capable with my left foot anyway. So all ended well.
It was all right in the end. Yeah, you regularly mention Lee Sharp, actually. Like, we all know about Ryan Giggs, but Sharp's, I wouldn't say he's slightly forgotten, like certainly by a certain vintage, but like his quality maybe is a little underrated.
Yeah, I mean, he was there when I was there, came before me. I think he signed up from Torquay for like 100 grand or something, nothing, peanuts. And he was fantastic. He was like a breath of fresh air. He was very lively. He tried to take Giggsy under his control, but the manager was trying to hold him back a little bit. But he was a great player, loved life, enjoyed himself, and had a great career at United. He was there for it must have been 7 years or so, and then moved across to Pennines. I think he went straight to Leeds, actually.
Leeds in 96, he rejected a new contract and went to Leeds.
That's right, and then ended up in Sampdoria and played a few different places.
Under David Platt, wasn't it?
David
and he
Platt,
came back to Bradford City.
That's right, and lives in Thailand now.
Does he?
Yeah, he's tried a pub in Spain, and he's been around, really good golfer and all that, but he lives in Thailand now.
I heard he was trying to make a professional Gareth Bale style. All right,
he probably was. Yeah.
And then the other question I have in terms of Alex Ferguson, yourself, is the day he says you're taking penalties.
Yeah.
So Steve Bruce his record turned a bit sour with the penalties, wasn't he? He was missing a few, and is that right? And then Eric Cantona.
So Brucey was penalty taker, and then.
Did he miss a few?
He didn't. I know he might have. He might have missed a few, but obviously Eric came in November '92, and he kind of took over from Brucey, because Brucey wasn't getting any younger. So when you get a bit older, the manager kind of leaves you in and out of games, as human nature will dictate a little bit. So then Eric took over. Eric left in '97, and we signed Teddy, and Teddy missed his first 3 pens. The last of them being at White Hart Lane. And the manager said to me, you're on penalties from now on, which I was more than happy to do.
I imagine,
defender, chance of scoring goals, brilliant.
He scored over 30 goals for United. It wasn't just penalties. A lot
of. I only took penalties for probably 3 or 4 years, because as I said, Brucey and Eric right up to '97. So. Yeah, no, it was good. I didn't mind that.
I don't know if you ever looked into your penalty taking technique, but I was watching back this morning, and I never noticed this. Is that you're walking about 10 yards backwards, the opposite direction, with the head down, and then you quickly turn around and take it. I presume you're just thinking about where you're putting it, because it's an unusual style. Yeah, no, it was like, I suppose you always had a favourite side, and the safer side is when you put it to the keeper's right as a right footer. You're using your... It's only when you open your body up a little bit that you're taking a bit more of a risk. So, but in this day and age, obviously with nothing to hide, cameras, everything's on TV these days, you have to be able to go both sides. But I didn't mind taking them. I think I had a fairly good record. I was confident in taking them. I have to ask Coley actually why he didn't like taking them. He said to me at 12 yards he didn't like shooting from 12 yards. He was more of a poacher. But I didn't mind it at all. Self-confidence was never an issue for you? No. Why is that? I don't know. I suppose it's just in my nature. Growing up, I suppose a little bit. There's nothing wrong with confidence in football. I think you need it. No, it's incredible, but I'd say it's not universal by any means. No, not at all. You different temperaments in games, and obviously a lot of help there at this day and age, because let's face it, there is an awful lot more pressure on professional players these days, particularly with social media doing the wrongs. That wasn't the case in our day at all. Mobile phones were just coming through in the mid-90s, so we missed most of that.
and we could just get on with it. And there wasn't, I mean, the Premier League now was huge. It's global. It felt when I was playing that we used to tour out in Southeast Asia and Australia and China, but now with particularly in America coming on board, it's very global, and we go out to America constantly pre-season, and we're doing so again. The Premier Cup this year out to America again. I think we play West Ham, Everton and Bournemouth out there, and it's just global. It's huge, and you look at all what's happened at Wrexham and Birmingham City, and it's you know, America fully involved now in the game of football, English Premier League and below that is amazing. Incredible what Wrexham have done, and if they go up again this year, what a story that is.
It's unbelievable. But your old club Oldham, it's gone the opposite way. Which
is a shame, but they're in fourth. Went up to see them last year up against Rochdale. They're in fourth this year, so they'll be in the playoffs, so hopefully they get back up, because once you start getting up, you can go on a bit of a roll. You saw that with Wrexham, Stockport to a certain degree. You know, they're up there again, challenging to try make it into the Championship. So once you start getting the ball rolling, and Oldham have got a good fan base as well, hopefully they'll get back up.
You played against some unbelievable wingers and forwards in your time, like, you know, you name check the likes of Hadji and Stoichkov and John Barnes. It's ridiculous. I was wondering, right, do any names spring to mind? Did you ever consistently get the better of a really like high profile winger or forward? Did you ever have anyone in your pocket, so to speak?
I used to. They were all challenges, because they were there for a reason. There was predominantly wingers back in the 80s and 90s in the English leagues were quick. Their job was to get down the sidelines and cross the ball to as I said, every team had a big centre forward. A big bustling centre forward, whether it was John Fashanu or Lee Chapman, you could go on and on. Shearer was brilliant in the air. You know, there's so many players that were so good in the air that I suppose wingers' job was to get the ball in as quick as possible. And you could kind of read what they were going to do, and you know, you could kind of counteract that a little bit. It was the ones that could drift inside, were good in the air, were clever, when to pass and when not to pass. They're the ones that caused you the biggest problems, as in John Barnes, and particularly when you went into Europe, Hadji and Stoichkov were incredible players. And they're the ones that caused you a lot of problems, and that's where you needed probably a midfielder when you sent them inside, somebody like Roy to try kick somebody, or Robbo back in the day. But they test you. They're the ones that got a little bit of pace, but got the cleverness as well to go with it. So they can go either way. And you look at wingers now that particularly play on the opposite side. That'd probably be. But Stoichkov was ahead of his era, because he was a right footer that played on the left.
Inverted winger.
Inverted winger that back in the day, and that's probably why Kaji used to play kind of in the middle and drift out your way. Henry was fantastic, but thank God Gary Neville got him most of the time. I mean, Zola was a great player as well, and going back in the day and all that. People forget how good a player little Zola was at Chelsea. And they all cause you problems, because they're all very, very clever.
You mentioned Roy there, and look, you could ask about him all the time for obvious reasons, but I do wonder, what he was like up close and personal as a footballer. Now, you know, it's very hard to separate the man from the footballer in terms of what he brings to you as a captain, and he brings everybody along with him. But just purely as a footballer, say, for argument's sake, if he was a really quiet fella and he wasn't a captain type and he wasn't shouting, just him as a player, what was he like? As
a player, well, he came in and he was a typical, I suppose, midfield player back in the day. He was a box-to-box player. Reminded me very much of Brian Robson. Great goal scorer, awareness of when to drift into spaces and score goals. You saw that at Forest when he went across from Cove Ramblers. You know, there was always a goal in him. He was always a threat. He was aggressive. He was quick. He got around the pitch. And then as he started to mature, and I suppose I think you start thinking about the game a bit more as you get more into your 20s. Became this incredible holding player that became, he became captain, but his game kind of went to a different level in terms of on the field. The way he kind of, I suppose, patrolled that midfield area, protected the back four, and let particularly great combination with Scholes. He let him get on with the 50-yard passes and knew what was good at and what he wasn't good at, and I don't think there was any better in the Premier League. And they're talking about great Premier League players, and I know it's so hard, but he would be right up there with me, because good to have in your team. Would support you, would really get the lads up and running and going for you, and brilliant at just reading the play. You know, if I used to always say, if you threw a ball up between two players, Roy'd know exactly where it was going to land.
Well, that's interesting.
And I think for a midfield holding player, I think that's half the battle, knowing when to sniff danger out, knowing when to go forward, because of course you can't just sit there on the whole game, when to go forward, and just not just looking after his own game, but obviously as a captain what was going on around him as well.
Well, he was intelligent. You hear a lot from ex-teammates, it was the weight.
Very intelligent.
The weight of his pass.
Yeah, very intelligent.
Was incredible. And like we're dying for a world-class midfielder now. From the Irish perspective, I'm talking about now. And was he just a freak of nature or what? Because
well, I mean, they come along every now and again. We were blessed, I suppose, in the early 90s with Andy Townsend, who was another great midfielder, and John Sheridan. John Sheridan was a fine midfielder as well, from Sheffield Wednesday. But Roy had a bit of everything. You know, he was quick. He could easily get around the field. He was fit, and he was aggressive. He wasn't afraid to put a tackle in, and he could score a goal for you. And essentially in the 90s, that's all you wanted a midfield player to do. And then, as I said, you know, you go into his career right into his 30s, a holding midfield player, could read the game, and I suppose just let the forward players get on with it, and that's his job. But obviously he did a lot more than that. You
mentioned some other great Irish midfielders there in your own international career. You had 56 caps, four goals, I think. Were they all free kicks?
No, I took a penalty against was it Croatia once? I had a penalty against Croatia, scored it. The rest were free kicks thing. But I came late to the scene because I obviously was at Oldham and just missed out in the 90 World Cup.
Was you gone into the PFA team of the season in the second division for Oldham, and you had just got to the Cup semi-final and the League Cup final? Were you disappointed to miss out on Italian 90?
I was. I mean, I didn't think of it at the time, but looking back on it, because Oldham were flying in that year. But I think Jack had a settled squad, and didn't change too much. So anyway, I enjoyed it back in Cork, streets in Cork. Enjoyed Italian 90. But so I was late on the scene. I didn't play till made my debut with Daly Monk Park, actually.
What age were you when you made your debut?
I was 24. 24. So I was late on the scene. But I had a great 10 years there with Ireland. Really was. 94 World Cup was unbelievable, really.
I remember my father telling me about the Romania game in Italian 90. He looked out in the street and there was literally no one. It was a Monday afternoon and nobody went back to work. But you mentioned USA 94. That was the tournament you went to, of course. You played the first two group games, including one of the most, if not the most famous Irish victory of all time against Italy. Am I right in saying you're suspended for the last group game?
Against Norway.
But then you didn't play against the Dutch in the last 16. I didn't play
against it. Gary Kelly got in and I didn't play. I was obviously gutted about that. Terry Phelan was left back. Didn't play. I don't know. It's one of them things, isn't it? But I just thought, Italy was unbelievable. Mexico, we battled, even though, the elements were against us, and we managed to squeeze. John Aldridge came on and scored a goal, managed to squeeze in. It was a weird group, actually. I think all teams finished on 4 points. I think we got through because we scored more goals than Norway or something like that, and then went into a hat and got drawn against Holland back down in Orlando. So that wasn't in our favour. There was no luck of the Irish there. I never played. I didn't play that game, which was hugely disappointing. No, you wouldn't expect to come on, because when you're chasing a game, you'd always bring forwards on. So it petered out for me, the World Cup.
56 caps. I would have always thought more.
As I said, I was late on the scene, and we got beat in the playoffs in 99 in Turkey on away goals, and I was out in Basra, and it was a long trip home, and it stuck us out there. We had to get a ferry back, and I just thought, I was done a lot of travelling with United at the time, and I just thought it was the right time to go. So I finished in 99.
There was that moment, was it April 98? Which, I mean, we were talking about the brilliance of 99 for you, but 98 was tough because Arsenal won the league and the Cup, United, and then Mick McCarthy had those, now infamous words, you have to prove yourself. Does that stick with you years later? Or do you
no, it's just kind of, it happens. I'm kind of, it's gone. I'm not one of them to hang on any grudges or anything like that. It's just part and parcel of being a footballer. Some managers you kind of see eye to eye with and you work with it. I played plenty of games under Mick. His system we wanted to play was initially 3 at the back, which suits some players and didn't really suit me. And it just, again, the disappointment of there was loads of disappointments along the way because 91, 92 we should have qualified for the Euros. 95, 90 we lost to Holland in a playoff at Anfield in 95.
It was Jack's last game, wasn't it?
Jack's last probably was actually. 97, 98 we lost out to Belgium, qualifying as well, and so we chuck in 99, 2000, losing out to Turkey in a playoff. There's a lot of big disappointments in there as well. So you'll find that with football that for all the good times, the kind of bad ones kind of stick with you. Because 95 with United was, we lost the league in West Ham, and 6 days later we lost the cup final to Everton. They kind of stick with you more.
Do they? The victories. Yeah, I heard that a lot actually. Well, in hindsight, it was an amazing time for Irish football because it was 3 major tournaments in what was it? 8 years.
Yeah, it was incredible.
6 years, and then you look at the state of the Irish team now. Would you still follow it a lot? Yeah.
It's just I always say it'll come back.
Do you think it will?
Yeah, it will.
I'm a bit worried about the future, to be honest.
I mean, rugby's made a huge step here in Ireland. I grew up watching rugby with Ollie Campbell and Fergus Slattery and Mike Gibson and all them, and you I've seen it through the years, and then you fast forward to what Ireland have done in the last 10 years in particular. So rugby's done really, really well. Hurling and Gaelic football will always be strong here, so there's a lot more competition, I think, and it's probably a bit more awkward for young players to go across to England now, so I don't think that helps an awful lot. Brexit rule and all. So I don't think that helps an awful lot, but I'm fully sure that it'll swing in roundabouts, and hopefully it will do. It's going to take time. I remember growing up in the early 70s, and Ireland always nearly qualified, and we had great players back in the day, Brady and Johnny Giles and all them. They were brilliant. Steve Highway, I grew up with all them, Don Givens, but never quite made it. So I think we're back to that kind of era. But I always think you'll have a chance because, I hate saying this, but you look at the numbers that qualify for European Championships and World Cups now.
It's surely going to benefit us.
Yeah, I think you've always got a chance. And it's good that even the League of Ireland now is taking a bit of an uptake with Duffer going in at Shelbourne and doing really well last year, and Shamrock Rovers obviously in a Europa conference this year, getting to a playoff and being very unlucky as well against, I think they lost out on penalties to Molde or something that. But it's good to see that League of Ireland's on the up as well, because you want Ireland to compete at soccer.
Definitely, we have live commentary of League of Ireland games every Friday night, and the interest is growing all the time. Sure, Cork City are back in the Premier Division.
Drawing too many games at the moment. We're doing all right.
Yeah, we are. In research, I was looking back and I was thinking, geez, why did he never go into coaching or management? And there was an article when you were 35, you were still at Man United, I think. How come it never happened? Because in the article you said, I wouldn't mind a bit of management. Yeah,
it was 35. I was doing World Cups and European Championships for RTE at the time.
I remember that,
And I took my coaching badge a couple of years later, CMB, and just didn't know what to do when I'd finished, because by the time I'd finished at Wolves, I was nearly 39. And I just wanted a bit of time off with my family, and that meant kind of trying to take weekends off. So I said I'd have a year gap in the coaching, and never went back to it, and kind of stuck around with the media for quite a while, and then started doing other things and ambassadorial work for United a few years later, and kind of never looked back since then. Never got back to coaching and all that. So, but listen, I can't complain. The life I've had, playing football and being in and around football since is brilliant.
What's life like now for you?
It's good. I can't complain.
Yeah.
I've got a good wife behind me, Jacqueline. I've got 3 good kids. They're all healthy and happy. They're all very sporty. They all go down to the gym. They do half marathons. Try kind of be there for them as much as possible. And I think the job of what I've got at the moment helps me do that an awful lot. Whereas I think if I'd obviously on hindsight, if I got into management, that probably wouldn't have been the case.
Yeah, fair enough. Who's your favourite fullback these days to watch?
It's a tough one.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of almost a purposely tough question because I feel like positions changed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the fella at Bournemouth can play. Kenny Kirkhouse.
Oh, Kirkhouse, left back.
I mean, there's every chance that he'll move on in the summer. I think modern day fullback. You look around. Is it the fella Robinson at Fulham? He's more than capable as well.
Oh, Anthony Robinson.
Yeah, he's more than capable. You look around, even these teams now, they produce really good players, and you know that they can buy players as well and nurture them a bit more than I suppose the big teams. You know, they're looking for the finished article. But I mean, listen, Trent Alexander, I'm obviously not a big Liverpool fan, but he's got going forward, and he's got a David Beckham-esque kind of right foot. To be fair to him, he's more than capable of scoring free kicks and being involved in attacking play. I always thought Luke Shaw, I think injuries have held him back an awful lot. He's just got himself, he's nearly fit, so hopefully he'll come back in. But whether he plays a left wing back or left centre half, that we'll have to wait and see on that one. Probably left centre half might suit him a bit more now. He was always more capable, but I always keep an eye out for fullbacks when they come to Old Trafford and just see what positions they take up and all, because it's different. You know, the way they play out of the box now, and you'd have to work that out yourself and adjust, I suppose, as a fullback. But listen, the best fullbacks in our era would easily be as good as the fullbacks in this era. And the fullbacks before me, the best fullbacks before me would have played in any era. It's as simple as that. The game changes. It's still a simple game, but the tactics and
players adapt as well.
Players adapt.
Yeah, I always think that too, that you'd be able to go in any era.
Have to adapt. If your manager wants you to play you a certain way, you have to adapt to that, whether you like it or not.
I know we're tight for time here. The Premier League's back in action. It feels like it's been away for the Yanks. Manchester United against Nottingham Forest. You'll be
doing that tonight. Yeah.
Just a quick word on how do you think Ruben Amorim's doing? Yeah,
I mean, it's obviously taken over in a difficult position, and I mean, he'll be the first to admit he's probably learning the Premier League as he goes along. Because I don't care, it's the most physical league in the world in terms of a different physicality. When I was there was a lot more tackling in my day, where now it's like you got to be able to run. Unless you're a super player, you got to be able to run, and it's full on. It's 100%. You know, it's technique wise, it's improved an awful lot. But yeah, it'll take him a time to learn, and United have gone through some difficult times, particularly at home, where I think the pressure is more on you at home, where you look at losing at home to Bournemouth and Fulham and teams like this year, and it's been hard, really has. But there's glimmers there. Take him 2 or 3 windows to even look like a team that he wants to play. But we have to get the recruitment right. I think that's fair to say that the last 10, 11 years, that's been the biggest problem down at Manchester United. But I think he will be a success, but it'll take a while. But you look at Forest. We play Forest tonight. They finished 17th last year.
They're unbelievable.
You know what I mean?
FA Cup semi-final, third in the league.
Yeah. They're tucked in third place. I think they've got a bit of a gap. I think there's every chance that there's going to be 5 English teams in Champions League next season. So they've got every chance of making that, and that'd be incredible, really would.
All right, as the Guinness Storehouse celebrates its 25th birthday and its global partnership with the Premier League, the Matchday experience marks the end of the first chapter of a 4-year journey as the official beer and official non-alcoholic beer of the Premier League. Denis Irwin, thanks a million for your time.
Pleasure.